Imagine dying, living a long life, reaching nearly 80 years of age, being buried with full honors as the most powerful religious leader in Europe. Then one night, men arrive at your tomb. They tear open your grave. They drag your decaying corpse from the earth. They dress your rotting body in royal robes. They carry you into a courtroom and place you on a throne, not as a memorial, not as a warning, but as the defendant in a criminal trial. Your judges are alive. Your accusers are alive. Only you are dead. This sounds like a nightmare. Yet in the year 897 AD, it actually happened. A pope was dug from his grave and put on trial months after his death. But the most terrifying part is not what happened. It's why. Because this wasn't about religion. It was about revenge. This is the horrifying true story of the Cadaver Synod. The day a corpse stood trial before the church. The story begins with an old man. His name was Formosus. Born around 816 AD, Formosus spent decades climbing the ranks of the church. He was intelligent, diplomatic, politically skilled, and by the year 891, he had become pope. But 9th century Rome was not merely a religious city, it was a battlefield. Kings fought for crowns. Nobles fought for influence. Armies marched across Europe. And every faction wanted one thing: the blessing of the Pope. Because whoever controlled the Pope could claim legitimacy, and whoever controlled legitimacy could rule. Formosus understood this dangerous game. Unfortunately, he would make enemies powerful enough to follow him into the grave. At first, Formosus supported the powerful Spoletan dynasty. He crowned Guy III of Spoleto. Later, he recognized Guy's son, Lambert. But something changed. The Pope began to fear the growing power of the Spoletans. He believed they threatened both Rome and the Church. So Formosus made a decision that would haunt him forever. Secretly, he invited a rival ruler into Italy, a king named Arnulf of Carinthia. Arnulf crossed the Alps with an army. Rome opened its gates, and Formosus crowned him emperor. To Formosus, it may have seemed necessary. To Lambert and his supporters, it was betrayal. The Pope had switched sides. And in the violent world of medieval politics, betrayal was never forgotten. On April 4th, 896 AD, Pope Formosus died. He was nearly 80 years old. For a man living in the 9th century, it was an extraordinary age. There were no accusations of murder, no mysterious poisoning, no assassins. Just an old man reaching the end of his life. His body was buried. His enemies remained alive. And for a brief moment, it seemed the conflict had ended. But fate had one final twist. The Emperor Arnulf soon suffered a devastating illness. His power collapsed. The faction Formosus had betrayed began to regain control of Rome. And suddenly, the dead Pope no longer seemed beyond reach. In 896 AD, a new pope rose to power, Stephen VI. Unlike Formosus, Stephen was closely connected to the faction that had regained control of Rome. The supporters of Lambert now held influence once again, and they wanted justice, or perhaps revenge. Historians still debate how much of the trial was Stephen's idea and how much pressure came from powerful political allies. But the result was the same. The dead pope would face judgment. Not because he was dangerous, not because he could defend himself, but because his memory still threatened the people who had returned to power. They wanted more than victory. They wanted history rewritten. Months after his burial, Formosus was exhumed. Workers opened the tomb. The corpse had already begun to decay. The smell was overwhelming. The flesh had darkened. The body had become fragile. Yet the order remained. Dress him, carry him, seat him before the court. Witnesses watched in disbelief as the dead pope was clothed in papal garments and placed upon a throne. A corpse sat before the church. Waiting for judgment, the courtroom filled. Clergy gathered. Officials watched. Pope Stephen VI stood before the corpse. Charges were read aloud. Formosus was accused of violating church law, of unlawfully occupying the papacy, of abusing his authority. A deacon was assigned to answer on behalf of the dead man. The scene was grotesque. Stephen shouted accusations. The corpse remained silent. The deacon attempted responses. The outcome had already been decided. This was not a search for truth. This was political theatre, a public execution of a reputation. The dead pope could not speak, and that was exactly the point. The verdict was guilty. Formosus was declared unworthy. His decisions were condemned. His authority was stripped away. Many of the acts he performed as pope were declared invalid. This was the true purpose of the trial. If Formosus could be erased, then so could the legitimacy of those he had supported. Then came the final humiliation. The sacred robes were torn from the corpse. Several fingers used in papal blessings were cut away. The body was treated like that of a criminal. Even death offered no protection. Even burial offered no peace. The punishment was not over. The corpse was carried away, then thrown into the Tiber River. The body of a former pope drifted through the waters of Rome. The men responsible believed they had erased Formosus forever. Instead, they created a scandal that shocked Europe. Ordinary Romans were horrified. Whispers spread through the city. The trial seemed cursed. Some claimed miracles surrounded the discarded body. Others feared divine punishment. Public anger began to grow, and soon the people demanded answers. Not from the dead pope, but from the living one. The backlash was swift. Stephen's enemies moved against him. The pope, who had judged a corpse, was arrested, dragged from power, thrown into prison, and there, in 897 AD, he met a grim fate. Historical accounts report that Stephen was strangled inside his cell. The man who had condemned a corpse now faced his own judgment. The Cadaver Synod was later annulled. Many of its decisions were reversed. Formosus was restored. The attempt to erase him had failed. More than 1,000 years have passed since the Cadaver Synod, yet it remains one of the most disturbing episodes in human history. Not because a corpse stood trial, but because the trial revealed something darker. The dead pope was never the real target. Memory was. History was. Power was. An old man died at nearly 80 years of age. Months later, his enemies dug him up and placed him on a throne. They believed they could control the past. Instead, they became part of one of history's most horrifying true stories. And that is why the world still remembers the day a dead pope was put on trial.